Usually when we talk about a word like goodness, there's this underlying assumption that we were talking about a character trait.
Right. Yeah, like it's a behavioral metric.
Exactly. Like you help someone carry their groceries, or you donate a portion of your paycheck to a food bank, and society points to you and says, there it is, that's a good person.
Right. We just naturally want to categorize our actions. We want to measure our virtue against the people around us.
Yeah, we treat it as an ethical choice.
Yeah.
But then you step into the world of today's source material, and suddenly that moral compass is entirely the wrong tool for the job.
Totally.
Because goodness isn't the behavior here.
Yeah.
It's closer to physics.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
It's the operating system of reality. And today, we're taking a deep dive into this sweeping, basically theological manifesto that uses this bizarre premise to explain, well, everything.
Literally everything.
Yeah, from gravity to the geopolitical rise of modern nations to the philosophical justification for letting predators eat their prey.
The author is attempting something incredibly ambitious here. I mean, they're building a full-on theory of everything, where a single unbreakable law dictates how the atmosphere functions and how human rights should be defined.
I have to admit, reading the first few pages, I found myself getting a bit, defensive.
Oh, sure. It's a lot.
It is. The text makes some very bold, highly charged political and historical claims, specifically regarding the United States and China.
Right, and we should probably clarify something right up front about that.
Yeah, good point. Let's be very clear. Our mission today is not to endorse the building or validate the author's political viewpoints. We aren't taking a side at all.
No, not at all. We are simply mapping out the intricate, controversial, and frankly fascinating worldview the author has constructed.
Right. We are just looking at the architecture.
Yeah.
And I promise you, by the end of this deep dive, you are going to look at the idea of doing the right thing in a completely different, almost cosmic light.
It definitely shifts your perspective.
So if we want to understand that architecture, we actually can't start with human beings. We have to start with the literal universe.
Right, we have to start where the author starts.
The author claims that the entire material world is an artistic expression of something called recessive truth, goodness, and beauty. But that sounds incredibly abstract. How is the author actually defining this?
Well, they're defining it as a literal physical mechanism.
Okay.
The foundational premise here is that a creator, whom the text calls the greatest creator, designed the universe using a law of supreme goodness. So if we strip away our human idea of being nice, goodness in this text simply means order and harmony.
Wait, so just order?
Yeah, it is the invisible scaffolding that keeps the universe from collapsing in on itself.
So it's not a moral choice at all. It's the engine running the universe.
Exactly. And the text gives us some really vivid examples of how this engine operates. Take the celestial bodies in space, for instance.
Like planets and stars.
Right. You have these massive, voluminous planets hurtling through the void. Why aren't they just constantly smashing into one another?
I mean, physics, right? Or gravity.
Sure, but the author argues it's because they run harmoniously without hindering the paths of others. That lack of collision, that adherence to a specific path, that is the literal manifestation of goodness.
Oh, wow. Okay, and the same logic applies to the atmosphere, right? Because I was struck by the author's description of ecosystems.
Oh, the vertical space concept.
Yeah, there is this phrase used.
Yeah.
A total vertical crossing living space.
It is a great way to visualize it.
You have underground microorganisms, churning the soil, insects crawling on the surface, fish swimming in the rivers, and birds occupying the sky.
Right.
The author points out how they all occupy this massive three-dimensional grid, totally in sync. And they don't even have to think about it.
Because the mechanism of goodness is built right into them. Without that built-in harmony, the text argues that everything would instantly become unordered, ugly, and unbearable. Exactly. Chaos is the ultimate definition of non-goodness.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because I'm trying to think of how to visualize this for someone listening right now. It feels a bit like gravity. If you drop a coffee mug, gravity pulls it to the floor. That's predictable order.
Right.
If gravity suddenly reversed itself or just shut off, everything would fly apart. Or actually, maybe a better way to think about it is like a cosmic operating system. Goodness is the underlying code that keeps the software running smoothly.
Oh, I like that. Let's run with that operating system analogy.
Okay.
If goodness is the code that ensures harmony, then non-goodness is a corrupted file. It's a bug in the software. And the author applies this directly to human existence.
How so?
Well, for a human being, goodness is the innate desire to maintain the orderliness of your environment.
So if you're listening right now and you feel like your life is chaotic or your environment is overwhelming and stressful, this framework would argue that it's not just, bad luck.
Right.
It means the mechanism of goodness has been lost somewhere. You've fallen out of harmony with your surroundings or with that cosmic code.
Which forces us to ask a rather large question, right? If goodness is the gravity keeping the universe from collapsing, who is responsible for maintaining that gravity on Earth at the societal level?
Ah. And that is where the author turns the lens away from the stars and points it directly at human rulers and geopolitics.
Yep. And this is where we see the introduction of what we could call the rule of all.
The rule of all.
Yeah. The author looks back at historical Chinese emperors and judges them entirely through this lens of cosmic order. The claim is that emperors who lacked awe for God or heaven were fundamentally unkind. They lacked this structural goodness.
And the text draws a very direct, literal line between that lack of reverence and physical disasters.
Very direct.
It argues that a ruler who breaks the cosmic chain of command brings about frequent natural disasters, social unrest, and masses of people who literally cannot survive.
The author explicitly links this to a karmic concept, stating that good pratya grows good fruit and bad pratya results in evil consequence.
Wait, pause, Pratya. If you're like me, you might need a quick translation there before we move on. What does that mean?
Oh, sure. That's a concept borrowed from Buddhist philosophy. Essentially, it refers to the underlying conditions or the causal links that make something happen.
Okay.
So the author's saying that reverence for the cosmic order is the necessary soil, the good pratya, that allows a society to bloom.
And if an emperor did revere heaven, the text claims the result was good weather, prosperous harvests, and profound social honesty.
Yes, absolute order.
It even uses that old idiom about a society being so harmonious that people wouldn't pick up lost items on the street and didn't need to lock their doors at night.
Which brings the author to a highly charged comparison of modern superpowers, because the text applies this exact same historical lens to the United States and China.
Yeah, this part of the text really caught me off guard with how direct it was.
It pulls no punches. The author notes that U.S. presidents, during their oath of office, traditionally place their hand on a Bible and humbly place themselves under a creator.
Right.
The text argues that this specific act of humility, this adherence to the cosmic order, is the direct cause of rapid economic development, social prosperity, and a happy populace.
I really struggled with the causality there. How does swearing an oath translate to a booming GDP in the author's mind?
It goes back to the operating system. In the author's logic, when a leader acknowledges a higher power, they are accepting their role as a user of the system, not the programmer.
Okay. That makes sense within the framework.
Exactly. This humility aligns the nation with the cosmic flow, which leaves space for natural human innovation, free speech, and trade to flourish organically. But then the text pivots to past Chinese leadership,
Where the author argues that historical leaders did not speak of a creator and instead placed themselves in the position of being the savior of the people.
Right. And by claiming to be the savior, the leader is essentially trying to rewrite the cosmic operating system.
Playing programmer.
Precisely. They are claiming administrator privileges they don't actually possess. The author argues this inevitably causes a system crash, which physically manifests as the suppression of human nature, a lack of human rights, property violations, and widespread fear.
They frame this indifference to the natural order as fundamental non-goodness.
Yes.
But here's where it gets really interesting, and I have to challenge the author's logic here.
Go for it.
If the argument is that reverence for a creator equals prosperity, and a lack of reverence equals disaster and poverty, how on earth does the author reconcile this with the massive economic boom in modern China?
It's a glaring question.
We are talking about hundreds of millions of people being lifted out of poverty, massive infrastructure, a booming global economy. Does the author just ignore that? Or do they believe that providing food and a strong economy kind of cancels out those other issues?
Well, the author actually anticipates this exact critique, and their counter-argument is perhaps the most philosophically aggressive part of the text. They argue that economic wealth does not equate to goodness at all.
Wait, they separate the two completely.
Completely. The text states that solving the subsistence problem, making sure people have food, warmth, and a roof over their heads, is not what they call big goodness. In fact, the author categorizes eating and being warm as merely an animal property.
That is a heavy, heavy statement, calling the eradication of poverty an animal property.
It is. But the author is arguing that true human properties require much more than a full stomach. Human properties are defined by free speaking, the free pouring of ideas, and the freedom of movement.
So basic human liberties.
Right. If a society only solves the food problem, it hasn't achieved human goodness. It has merely satisfied a biological requirement.
And this brings up my favorite part of the source material,
Yeah.
the dog analogy.
Yes. To illustrate this, the author shares a story from their own life. They describe raising two large dogs. The author says, "I feed these dogs plenty of fresh meat. I give them pure, unpolluted water pumped straight from a well. I even let them run around and chase each other on this massive, beautiful, evergreen lawn surrounded by trees."
Honestly, probably better than many humans live.
Without a doubt, all of their physical needs are met effortlessly, but then the author asks the reader, does having all those needs met mean those two dogs have human rights? And the conclusion is no, they just have dog rights.
Whoa, dog rights.
Yeah.
That phrasing really stops you in your tracks. I mean, if you are listening right now, think about how often we measure our own success, or a nation's success, purely by material metrics.
Oh, all the time.
We look at infrastructure, we look at the size of our houses, or we point to a booming GDP and say, look how well we are doing.
It forces you to rethink what those metrics actually represent.
Exactly. The author is powerfully arguing that if humans only have their bellies full, but they are caged from expressing their ideals, their beliefs, their thoughts, they are fundamentally no different from those well-fed dogs on the lawn.
A golden cage is still a cage.
Right. And keeping a human in a cage, no matter how well you feed them, violates the cosmic harmony.
Therefore, it is categorized as non-goodness.
But, okay, if we follow that thread, the natural human instinct when placed in a cage is to break the bars. You want to fight back.
Naturally.
But as I moved into the next section of the source, I hit what feels like an insurmountable paradox.
Oh, the rebellion aspect.
Yeah, the author spends all this time explaining why people are oppressed, validating that they are treated like animals, but then explicitly condemns rebellion, like completely condemns it.
The text acknowledges the grim reality of oppression. It literally says, misgovernment makes the people rebel because the people have to rebel.
They have to. It implies a forced, inevitable reaction to being caged.
It does. But the author immediately pivots and declares the revolt itself is definitely not goodness. Any action of uprising, whether it's revolt, robbery, deprivation, or fighting to overthrow a dictatorship, is strictly categorized as non-goodness.
I found myself getting genuinely frustrated reading this.
I can see why.
If the dictator is practicing non-goodness by caging the people, why is breaking the cage also non-goodness?
Well, we have to return to our operating system analogy, to the foundational definition of goodness we established at the beginning.
Okay, remind me.
Goodness is order. Rebellion, by its very nature, is the destruction of order.
Oh.
Even if the existing order is deeply flawed, oppressive, or cruel, the act of violently tearing it down introduces chaos. And in this framework, chaos is the ultimate antithesis of goodness.
It's an incredibly rigid way to view history. I mean, the author even lists specific historical movements to prove this point, regardless of their cultural context.
They do. The text strongly condemns large-scale movements that combine culture with politics. It specifically targets the May 4th movement, the June 4th incident, and the Great Cultural Revolution.
Those are massively complex, completely distinct historical events. I mean, some were student protests, others were top-down ideological purges, yet the author lumps them all together.
Because, in the author's view, the specific political goals of those movements don't matter. What matters is the resulting chaos. The text claims these movements treated countless good people unjustly, destroyed the natural mind, and ultimately made the populace more cunning and selfish.
They broke the harmony.
Exactly. They broke the harmony, and therefore they are non-goodness.
And the author doesn't just stop at political revolutions. The net for what constitutes non-goodness is cast incredibly wide. Anything that breaks harmony makes the list. Environmental destruction is categorized as the act of a prodigal son destroying the foundation of their descendants.
It also includes things like jealousy, hatred, manufacturing fake goods for profit, counterfeiting, and loan sharking.
The text even calls out the plots and strategies invented in casinos, on battlefields, or in ruthless market capitalism.
Right.
If your goal is to entrap, weaken, or destroy an opponent for your own gain, you are practicing non-goodness.
Because you are actively creating disharmony. The author writes that goodness is the scale to measure a person's human nature. If there is disharmony anywhere around you, it means at least one party involved, maybe you, maybe someone else, is introducing a bug into the software.
Okay, but I have to push back here on behalf of anyone listening who feels trapped by this logic.
Sure.
Because if you are oppressed, if you are being treated like the dog on the lawn, denied your basic human rights, but you are explicitly told you cannot rebel because rebellion disrupts order,
Mm,
aren't you just permanently trapped?
seems that way, yeah.
How does the author justify this entirely passive stance for humanity?
It is a profound tension in the text, absolutely. And it is only resolved when the author reveals the final, deeply theological piece of the puzzle, the ultimate hierarchy of goodness.
Ah, this is where we learn about the two tiers.
Exactly. The author splits goodness into two distinct categories. First, there is common goodness, which is sometimes translated as low goodness. This tier belongs to humans, to saints, sages, and wise men. Then there is greater goodness, or high goodness, which belongs exclusively to the Creator, to gods, and to Buddha.
And the rules for these two tiers are not the same.
Far from it. This is where the text takes a very dark, complex twist. It states that greater goodness often looks like pure evil to human eyes.
The quote that stuck with me was, "The big benevolence seems heartless, the big goodness seems evil."
Yeah, that's the one. The author claims that things like keeping Satan around, preserving violent predators in the wild, or even, and this is a direct quote from the text, designedly destroying part of the human race are acts of greater goodness.
It is. Wow.
They are actions taken by the Creator to maintain the ultimate overarching cosmic balance. Think about it. Why does the universe need predators? Because without them, the ecosystem collapses. But to the prey being eaten, it just looks like senseless violence.
That's the ultimate mysterious ways argument, but with real teeth to it.
Exactly. And this is where the human limitation is strictly enforced. The text is very clear. The only job for human beings is to stick to common goodness. Our sole responsibility is to maintain order and harmony in our immediate environment. We are explicitly forbidden from attempting greater goodness.
Because if we try to play God, we become the dictator.
The text warns that if humans conspire to execute high goodness like deciding to violently destroy a flawed societal system in order to rebuild a perfect utopian one, they will inevitably take the road of demons.
Right. To bring back our tech analogy, it's like we are the middle management of the universe. We
Right.
don't get to write the underlying code. We don't have the administrative privileges to format the hard drive, even if we know the hard drive is completely full of junk and malware.
That formatting process is the creator's job.
And sometimes when the creator formats the drive, it looks incredibly destructive to us.
Yes. But as humans, our only authorized action is to run the antivirus software on our own individual machines, keep our heads down, clear out our own malware, and keep the peace in our local department. You can only control your own alignment with the universal order.
And if you don't,
If politicians, thinkers, scientists, or artists fail to maintain that local harmony, the text says they will inevitably lead humanity astray and distort human nature.
it all funnels back to that single mechanism of order.
It does. If we synthesize the core message of this entire manifesto, it is this. The author's worldview insists that whether you are a world leader shaping geopolitics, a philosopher, or just an everyday citizen, your humanity is measured solely by your ability to maintain harmony with the world around you.
Your goodness is defined by your lack of disruption,
Exactly.
which leaves us with a massive amount of philosophy to chew on. We started this deep dive talking about how goodness is usually seen as a simple moral choice, a behavioral quirk. And we've journeyed through a worldview that treats it as the unbreakable law of cosmic gravity, dictating the rise and fall of empires.
It's a huge shift in perspective.
It really is. But I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over as you go about your day. Something that builds on the strict definitions we've just explored. The author forcefully argues that human goodness requires us to maintain order, to never disrupt the system, even in the face of tyranny, because rebellion brings chaos.
Right.
But if we are never allowed to shake the cage, how do we distinguish between true, beautiful harmony and just forced, fearful silence?
Oh.
Can an ecosystem truly be in harmony if the peace is maintained entirely by the threat of the cages the author warned us about? It's a question of whether true goodness can actually exist without the freedom to choose it.
That's the real paradox, isn't it?
It is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the fundamental definitions of the world around you, and we'll catch you next time.